So, good afternoon. Yeah, so today we have started a new topic, which was basically the concept of the time value of money. So you have done some part of the same. So you are to start on D. We are done A, B, C. So we go to D. So we want to check on D. So D is supposed to be what D as the present value. The present of the annuity. So now we check D. It's supposed to be the present value for the annuity. So we have done something about the present value for the simple amount. So now we go to the present value for the annuity. So today we have already discussed what we mean by an annuity. An annuity is simply when you receive the same amount every period for a given period of time. And I gave you an example of rent. Rent every month is the same. Let's say for 12 months. So any amount which is the same every period for a given number of periods, we normally refer to it as annuity. We normally refer to it as annuity. Then we had also said that there were two types of annuity. Annuity ordinary, where cash flows occur at the end, or annuity due, where it occurs at the beginning. So we shall not go into detail to discuss the annuity because it is already there in your notes. When you go to B, we discussed about the future value for the annuity. So I explained what we mean by annuity. So what we shall now simply go about is now how to compute the present value of the annuity, because you already know how to get the future value for the annuity. So in the process, we shall come up with the values. So what I will do, I will simply give you an illustration on that. I will simply give you an illustration on that item, because I've already explained what we mean by the present value, also what we mean by the annuity. So what we can do now, I will give you an illustration so that I show you how to get the present value for the annuity. So we can write something brief as an illustration on that. We can write something brief as an illustration by summarizing that. Consider an investor who is expected. Consider an investor who is expected to receive shillings 100,000. Who is expected to receive shillings 100,000 at the end of each year. 100,000 at the end of each year for the next 4 years. At the end of each year for the next 4 years. For the next 4 years. Then we continue by writing that if the prevailing interest rate, or discounting rate is 12%. If the prevailing interest rate or discounting rate is 12%, determine the present value. Determine the present value of this cash flow. Determine the present value of these cash flows. Determine the present value of these cash flows. So I will show you how to use the formula, then also how to use now the present value table and see how we shall go about to get the same value. So we can start by having another paragraph by noting that using the formula, comma, the present value of the annuity. using the formula, comma, the present value of the annuity will be calculated as follows. Using the formula, comma, the present value of the annuity will be calculated as follows. The present value for the annuity. So, present value for the annuity, it will be given by the annuity, then in the brackets of 1 plus r raised to the power of -n. So we come up with, sorry, just a minute. It's supposed to be 1 minus in the brackets 1 plus r raised to the power of -n. So when you want to compute the present value for the annuity, we simply take the annuity, then now in the brackets of 1 minus 1 in the brackets 1 plus r, but we raise to the power of -n. Then we divide by r. So it is the reverse of the future value. For the future value, if you can confirm in your notes, it was meant to be annuity, then 1 plus r, that's the power of n minus 1 divided by r. So this was for the future value, but now for the present value, we shall now be able to apply it from this portion. So we are simply answering the question. When you go through that question, I've given the annuity is the cash cost. So that investor is expected to receive how much at the end of each year? So when the amount is given, so they are given us as 100,000, then 1 minus. So R is the interest rate. R is meant to be our interest rate, whereby I gave you an interest rate of what percent? So 12% is the same as 0.1. So the period is how many years? 4 years. So N will be 4. Then we also divide by 0.1. So what I want you to do, I would like you first of all to calculate this figure in brackets and round it off to 4 decimal places before we multiply it, because there is something you want to compare with so that they should be uniform. So just calculate the figure, round it off to 4 decimal places and see it is coming to which value before we multiply by the 100,000. Seven. 3.037. When you round off to 4 decimal places. Like that. Yeah, so now we can compute it like that. So multiplied by 100,000 so that now you get the present value. So this is now when you apply the formula, but I want you to show you how to use the table now. I want now to check when we use the table, it should be able to give us which value. So we can now add there a paragraph by noting that using the present value table, 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 comma, the present value table of the annuity, using the present value table of the annuity, comma, the present value of the cash flows will be expressed as follows. The present value of the cash flows will be expressed as follows. The present value of the cash flows will be expressed as follows. So now to get the present value to get the present value for the annuity, we simply take the annuity multiplied by the present value interest factor for the annuity at R% is equal to N. So to get now the present value for the annuity, you simply take the annuity, then multiplied by present value interest factor for the annuity. So R is that interest rate, then N is the period. So N is the period, then R is now our interest rate. But this is simply referring to present value interest factor for the annuity. So for annuity, the question has given you 100,000. So this will be the present value interest factor for the annuity. 12%. Was it 12%? Yes. For 4 years. So I want you to go to the annuity table. You have two tables in your past papers. You have two tables in your past papers, the annuity table and the single period table. So there are two of them. So I want you to check where the heading for the table is present value interest factor for the annuity. Are you able to see the one they have headed as the present value interest factor for the annuity? Ziko mbili at the back. One is for the single period, the other one is for the annuity. So I want you to check the one they have indicated that present value interest factor for the annuity of 1 discounted. So are you able to see that one? So hapa juu kuna mahali wameandika as present value interest factor for the annuity. So if you can see the one that I've indicated there as the annuity, I want you to go to period 12 up there. So period 12, then move up to period 4. Move up to period 4 and see the figure you get from the table. And see the figure you get from the table. It is supposed to be the same as the one that you calculated. Whether you calculate or you use the table, it should be able to give you the same figure. So you can see it is 3 point what? So the figure is given there as 3.0373. So that's now how you will be coming up to the value. So you either compute, but when you compute, make sure you round it off into 4 decimal places. But when you read them from the table, it is given clearly from that portion. So that is now when we shall be using the table for the annuity. The annuity table, they have indicated up there. For the single period table, it is also indicated. So this one is for the annuity. So let us now proceed. I will give you another illustration and see what happens after that. So we can also add there another example by noting that assume that investor in the example above, assume that the investor in the example above, assume that the investor in the example above was to receive, assume that the investor in the example above was to receive the amount, at the start of each year, was to receive the amount at the start of each year, was to receive the amount at the start of each year. Determine the present value, determine the present value of the annuity, determine the present value of the annuity, determine the present value of the annuity, determine the present value of the annuity. So this time around, those cash flows are now coming at the beginning. The illustration we have done before, it was at the end. So if it comes at the beginning, I will use both the formula and the table. I will use both, but the results will still be the same. We shall apply both. So when we are applying both, and we use the formula, it is that the present value for the annuity, when it occurs at the beginning of the year, we refer to it as annuity due. When it occurs at the end, it was ordinary annuity. So the formula is still the same. It is the annuity, then 1 minus 1 plus r, raised to the power of negative n, then we divide by r. But after that, multiply again by 1 plus r. After that, we multiply again by 1 plus r in that manner. So the concept that we have is the same question, whereby this one is 100,000, then 1 minus 1 plus 0.12, then we also divide by that. Then after that, 1 plus 0.1, the 1 plus r. So we have agreed that this figure first, you round it off to 4 decimal places, so that it is the same as the one in the table. Before you multiply by 1.12, then you multiply 100. So the answer is still the same when you use now the other method from the table. But what you are getting here is not the same as when it occurs at the end. When it occurs at the end, the figure will be different. So remember, if you are using the table, which is obvious, this figure will be the same from the table, but you will now also multiply by 1 plus r. You will also multiply 1 plus r. So if you are to use the table, the figure you get that from the table, you also multiply 1 plus r, which is the same figure that we have. So that is now how we shall be using the table when the cash flows are annuity. Now I want us to go to E. So that was D. We now go to E. We go to E. So E should be present value of the annuity in perpetuity. So now we go to E as present value of the annuity in perpetuity. Now we go to E as the present value of the annuity in perpetuity. Present value of the annuity in perpetuity. So for that, you summarize that it refers to the annuity. It refers to the annuity which is received or paid. It refers to the annuity which is received or paid each year. It refers to the annuity which is received or paid each year, which is received or paid each year until infinity. It refers to the annuity which is received or paid each year until infinity. Until infinity. Therefore, the present value of the annuity, the present value of the annuity until infinity will be expressed as follows. Therefore, the present value of the annuity until infinity will be expressed as follows. Therefore, the present value of the annuity until infinity will be expressed as follows. So, to compute the present value of the annuity, so that will be meaning up to infinity. So, present value for the annuity until infinity will be given by the annuity. Then we divide by the cost of capital. So present value of the annuity up to infinity You simply take the annuity, we divide by the cost of capital. You simply take the annuity, divide by the cost of capital. So annuity we use that, the cost of capital we use R by that. So in summary, it is the annuity divided by R. So this one can also be the same as annuity multiplied by 1 over R. So this formula is the same as that. That formula will be the same as that. But so just take the annuity divide by R, or annuity multiplied by 1 over R. It will still give you the same value. So that's now E, which is supposed to be. So I'll give you several of them before now we get a question that has combined all of them. So that now will be for the present value of the annuity. Then E, you can have E as, sorry, F not E. So this one was one which was supposed to be. This one we have E somewhere there. So this one is there. So this one should be present value. The present value of the growing annuity in perpetuity. Present value of the growing annuity in perpetuity. The present value of the growing annuity in perpetuity. Present value of the growing annuity in perpetuity. So for that, we summarize that this is where the annuity is expected. It is where the annuity is expected to increase. It is where the annuity is expected to increase at a constant growth rate per annum until infinity. It is where the annuity is expected to increase at a constant growth rate per annum until infinity. At a constant growth rate per annum until infinity. Until infinity. So when you want to compute the present value of the annuity, which is growing up to infinity, this is present value of the annuity growing up to infinity. So present value of the annuity, which is growing up to infinity, it will be given by annuity in period 1. Annuity in period 1. It will be annuity in period 1. Then we divide by cost of capital. Cost of capital. Then we subtract the constant growth rate. Constant growth rate. So when you want to compute the present value for the annuity, which is growing up to infinity, we simply get the annuity in period 1. We divide by the cost of capital minus the constant growth rate. So this is the same as annuity in period 1 divided by R minus G. So the constant growth rate is the same as G, the cost of capital is R. To get the annuity in period 1, you simply take the annuity in period 0, then 1 plus G. So we divide by R minus G. So if you want to get the annuity in year 1, you take the annuity in period 0, then increase it by the constant growth rate, G. So G is the growth rate. Like now, if at all this year I have 10 shillings, but I'm told that it is growing at maybe 5%. Maybe it is growing at 5%. So if I want to get that figure next year, I simply take 10, then 1 plus. The growth rate is now 5%, the same as 0.05. I've simply increased it by what percent? 5%. That's what I mean at this point. So 1 plus G, because that G is a percentage. So you add it on the value now to get the growth there, annuity in period 1. So when you want to get annuity next year, you take the annuity for this year, then increase it by that constant growth rate. So we shall get them from the question perspective on how to work out. So this one is what was annuity the previous period, so that you increase it with the constant growth rate now to get for the current period. So that one, I will also leave it like that. When we get now a question, I will be able to explain further for the same. So we go to G. The next one will be now G. G is present value. Present value. G will be the present value of the differential annuities. Present value of differential annuities. Present value of the differential annuities. So this kind of the annuity, let's say from year 1 up to year 5, the cash flows are the same. Then from year 6, it changed. But after it has changed, it again remained the same, let's say up to year 10. So you started from year 1 up to year 5, the cash flows were the same. Then it changed in year 6. But after changing, it also remained the same up to year 10. So those kind of the annuity, we refer to them as differential annuities. So we shall see how now to get the present value for that. So we summarize that this is where the cash flows remain the same. It is where the cash flows remain the same for a given period of time. It is where the cash flows remain the same for a given period of time. It is where the cash flows remain the same for a given period of time, and then they change. And then they change. And then they change. However, after they change, they will also remain the same. However, after they change, they will also remain the same. They will also remain the same for another given period of time. They will also remain the same for another given period of time. They will also remain the same for another given period of time. So I will give you now an illustration to demonstrate that. I will give you now an illustration for that. So an illustration, we can summarize that. Consider a 5-year project. Consider a 5-year project. Consider a 5-year project, which is expected. Consider a 5-year project, which is expected to generate, the following cash flows. Consider a 5-year project, which is expected to generate the following cash flows, which is expected to generate the following cash flows. So we shall be having the year, then also cash flows like that. So year 1, the cash flows are 60,000. Year 2, cash flows are 50,000. Then year 3, you have 30,000. Year 4, you also have 30,000. Year 5, you also have 30,000. So year 1, 60, year 2, 50, year 3, 30, year 4, 30, year 5, also 30. So you can see year 3, year 4, and year 5, those cash flows are the same. Then now we add there a paragraph that if the cost of capital is 12%, if the cost of capital is 12%, determine the present value of these cash flows. If the cost of capital is 12%, determine the present value of these cash flows. If the cost of capital is 12%, determine the present value of these cash flows. So what we shall do for that part. So what we need to do for this portion, we can present it this way. The year, then cash flows, then present value interest factor. I've given you 12% like that for each year, so that now we get the present value. So I will first use the first table where the cash flows are the same. Then after that, I show you how to use the second table, the annuity table. So there is year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, up to year 5. So those cash flows, there is 60, there is 50, there is 30, there is also 30, there is also 30. So this is the present value interest factor 12% for each period. So N is each period. So I want us to use the other table, the one for the single period table. The one for the single period table. So that you see the other one where they have simply indicated as present value interest factor of 1 received at the end of N period. So that one is not, you can see the one for the annuity, they indicated as annuity. So this one, when cash flows are not the same, when cash flows are not the same, we use the other table. But when they are the same for all of them, we use the one indicated as annuity. But I will be explaining why we have it as annuity and why you have it as the single period. So if you check the table which is not the annuity, if you check in the table which is not the annuity, 12% in year 1, they have given you which figure? 0.8929. And confirm also for year 2. 0.79. 72. Also confirm year 3. The 3 is 0.7. 111. This 118. 7. Then confirm the one for year 4. 0.6355. Then also year 5. 0.5674. So now multiply this by this to get this value. Also this by that to get that value. This by that to get the value. Then you will add them together. So multiply this one by this one to get this. Also this one by this to get that. And finally you will add them together. So after you get the totals, I also want you to get the total for the last three separate. I also want you to get the total for the last three separate. I also want you to get the total for the last three separate. Okay. Then another thing I want us to learn. So I want you to go to the other table, the annuity table. I want you to check the other table. So I want you to check the other table. So when you check in the other table, 12% in year one, when you go to the annuity table, 12% in year one, you can see it is still the same as this one. So year one, they are the same. But for year two, you are seeing which year? Yeah, so to get that figure, we just add this one and this one of the first table. We'll add this and this and see what you get. You can see I'm getting the one in the year two. Then also, I want you to add this one on what you have just calculated, the one for year three. Also add the one for year three. You can see it is the same as the one for year three. So the annuity table is the cumulative total of the first table, of the other table. So the annuity table is the cumulative total of the other table. So now that we know that the annuity table is the cumulative of the other table, when the cash flows are the same, like this one, when cash flows are the same for this one, now I want to show you how to use the second table to get this part. You see what we have added together and found the value there. So now instead of using this first table, you want to use the second table and get this same value that you have added. So it is from year 3 up to year 5 when cash flows are the same. It is from year 3 up to year 5 when cash flows are the same. So when they are the same, we refer to them as annuity. So this annuity, I take the present value interest factor for the annuity, 12% in year 5. 12% in year 5. But now, you see, we only want between year 3, 4, and year 5. But when I check in that annuity table in year 5, you see 12% in year 5 in that table that we have accumulated. It has also included what? Year 1 and year 2. So the figure we get, we subtract the value for year 1 and year 2. That is present value interest factor for the annuity, 12% in year 2. Because when I get the one for year 5, it has included year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But we only want year 3, 4, and 5. So to do that, simply take the one for year 5, then subtract the one for year 2, because year 2 has year 1 and year 2 for the accumulative table. So you just take the 30,000, which is this one of them only. Then I want you now to check in that annuity table, 12% in year 5. Check now in that annuity table, what is 12% in year 5? Sorry? 3.6048. Then now confirm in the same table, the one for year 2. 690. So subtract now this from this and multiply by this and see whether you get the same figure that you had added for year 3, year 4, and year 5. So that when cash flows are the same, we know how to use the annuity table. Instead of having year 3, year 4, and year 5 separate. So just combine them as year 3 to year 5. We take that one annuity, then we see how it will be able to work for that question. So it is given the same. Yeah, so when the cash flows are the same, now remember to be using the second table. And I've given the order of how to use now the second table. Instead of, you see this one, can it be like now from year 3 up to year 20? You see if it is from year 3 up to year 20, you cannot list all of them. So you change to this format and use the second table. If they are the same from year 3 up to year 20, you cannot list from year 1 up to year 20. It will take a lot of that time. So the best way, after you reach the year 2, year 3 up to year 20, go to the second table, the annuity table, and get the same. So I will give you another illustration. I will give you another illustration on that part and see what else we can come up with. I'll give you another illustration. So we can summarize that. Consider a project. Consider a project which is expected. Consider a project which is expected to generate the following cash flows. Consider a project which is expected to generate the following cash flows. Consider a project which is expected to generate the following cash flows, which is expected to generate the following cash flows. Which is expected to generate the following cash. So we can have the year and also the cash flows. So from year 1 up to year 4, the cash flows are the same as 30,000. Then year 5 up to year 9, cash flows are the same as 1,000. Then year 10 up to infinity, cash flows are the same as 20,000. And now we add there a paragraph that if the discounting rate is 10%, if the discounting rate is 10%, if the discounting rate is 10%, determine the maximum price. Determine the maximum price that the company will be willing to pay. Determine the maximum price that the company will be willing to pay. The company will be willing to pay in order to acquire the project. Determine the maximum price that the company will be willing to pay in order to acquire the project. The company will be willing to pay in order to acquire the project. So I also want you to add there another paragraph by noting that the maximum price to pay, the maximum price to pay, the maximum price to pay will be equal to, the maximum price to pay will be equal to present value, will be equal to the present value, will be equal to the present value of all the cash inflows. Present value of all the cash inflows, of all the cash inflows to be generated by the project. The maximum price to pay will be equal to the present value of all the cash inflows to be generated by the project. To be generated by the project. So what I will do for that case, I will be having the year, then the formula I will be using. The formula I will be using, then I do some computation or calculation for that. So I will come up with this kind of arrangement. Up with that kind of arrangement. So from year 1 up to year 4, it will be an annuity multiplied by the present value interest factor for the annuity 10% for 4 years. 10% for 4 years. So it will be annuity multiplied by present value interest factor for the annuity, 10% for the 4 years. So our annuity, it is 30,000. Annuity from year 4 to year 4, it is 30,000. So we go to that second table. Let's go to that second table. Confirm what is 10% in year 4. We are using the one that is cumulative. Yeah, that cumulative one is annuity. So 7. 2 points. Like that. Yeah. So that one is multiplied by that. Then the next one should be from year 5 to year 9. So from year 5 to year 9, it will be an annuity in the brackets of present value interest factor for the annuity, 10% in year 9. So I should subtract the one for which year? I subtract the one for year 4. Yeah, because 5, what we want is to remove year 1 up to year 4. Because year 1 up to, so you minus the one for year 4. So it will be 50,000 in the brackets of. So confirm in year 9. Sorry. 10% in a period 9. 5.75 like that. Then sasa you less 3.169. The one for year 4 we already have. The one for year 4 we already have this. The one for year 4 we already have it. So the next one is now from year 10 up to infinity. The next one is now meant to be from year 10 up to infinity. So it will be annuity, then present value interest factor for the annuity. So 10% up to infinity. Then, so I minus the one for which year? I minus the one for year 9. So in the notes, kuna mahali tuliandika up to infinity. Up to infinity, tulisema it is annuity divided by R. Yeah. But tena nikasema it is annuity in the brackets of 1 plus 1 divided by R. You remember when we changed that? So for this one, I will use that portion. Because annuity will be 20, but now 1 over R. So R is 10%. That's the same as 0.1. Then now you minus the one for year 9. You minus the one for year 9. So the one for year 9, we know it is 5.759. So that now when you add them together, you get the present value of those cash flows. So, what is the total value when you add all of them together? So we go to your past papers. There is a question for May 2018, question number 4, part D. We go to May 2018. May 2018. Question number 4, part D. May 2018, question number 4, part D. May 2018, question 4 D. Mine is on page 47. So check page 47. Check 47. And check on page 47. On page 47. So there's a question number 4D. So May 2018, question number 4D. Question number 4, part D. So that question 4D, that question number 4, part D, they were able to say that Matter Limited is in the process of completing construction of a greenhouse. They are in the process of completing construction of a greenhouse. So the finance manager has estimated that the project's useful life is 15 years and shall generate the following cash flows. So year 1 up to year 5, they gave you 5 million. Year 6 to year 10, they gave you 9 million. Then year 11 to year 15, they were able to give you 4 millions. They were able to give you 4 millions. So the required rate of return for the company is what percent? 10%. So required total present value of the project. Total. So we arrange it in this manner. So the first one, you see it is from year 1 up to year, no, the first category. Yeah, so year 1 up to year 5. The second category is from year 6 to 10. And the last category is from year 11 to 15. So the year in infinity. So we arrange them from that order. So that this one is year 5. This one is year 10. Finance. Year 5. So this is year 15. So that now you can be able to present it. So this one is 5. This one is 9. So follow that order, then also now you get this total there. So, getting a total of which here? 45,9.2. So there is a similar question also. September 2015, question 4A. September 2015, question number 4, part A. To the pilot paper. To the pilot paper. So go to page 67. Is it 67? Question 4, part A. So when you go to page 71, so there is September 2015, question number 4, part A. So that question 4, part A, they have stated that A Limited is considering taking over B Limited. A Limited is considering taking over B Limited. The forecasted annual net operating cash flows to be generated by the target firm are given as follows. To be generated by the target firm are given as follows. So they gave you year 1, 2, those are separate. But year 3 to year 7 is given, year 8 to year 10 is given. 11 and above is also given. So the minimum required rate of return is 5% above the risk-free rate of return. So risk-free rate of return is given as what percent? 15. So that means your cost of capital, you will add 15 plus 5, because they have said that minimum required rate of return is what percent? 5% above the risk-free rate of return. the risk-free rate of return is 15%. So that required rate of return is now our cost of capital or the interest rate. It's the cost of capital or simply the interest rate. So your R that we are using up there, simply take 5 plus 15, which gives you 20. So we should be using 20%. We should be able to apply 20%. Then now we arrange the same way. We now arrange the same way. But year 1 and the year 2, remember we use the first table because those cash flows are not annuities. So you start off with year 1. So for year 1, we'll simply take the 5 millions. So maybe I can write there. So you can use 5,000 to have 3 zeros at the top, isn't it? Because the figures in the table are rounded off to 4 decimal places. So instead of the Palma unaweza tumia the complex, the space will be minimum. Yeah, so for year 1, just get 20% in year 1. So this will be 5,000. So I'm putting 3 zeros at the top. So it is 5 millions. Yeah, so naweka hapa juu 3 zeros. So that we can consider that order. So what is 20% in year 1? Eight. Like that. So we go to year 2. So year 2. So this one, I'm still using the other table because it is also not annuity. So you also confirm. So in the other table, what is there in year 2? 0.6. That's 0.6944. But now you see from year 3 to year 7. So here annuity. Year 3 to year 7 is an annuity, whereby you take the annuity, then present value interest factor for the annuity, 20% in year 7. So we subtract the one for which year? Year 2. So now you use the other table. Now use the other table. So 20% in year 7. And still in the same table, confirm the one for year 2. Msitumie hii ni ya hiyo table. Yeah, tunatumia the second table. So the second table ukitaka una add hizi mbili. Unaona hizo mbili. Just compare because you are removing year 1 and year 2 from that total. Then now you repeat the same for year 8 up to year 10. Then 11 up to infinity above the same as up to infinity. I've also shown you how to build the one up to infinity. So you have 3 up to your 7, you have 8 up to your 10, 11 also up to infinity. Yes. Kuanzia ya 3 up to hiyo infinity tunatumia the untitled. So and above is the same as up to infinity. So in our pair, which total? Unapata 48. $48,998.2. Are you getting 48? Yeah, so now we are conversant with the tables. So now the conversant is how to use the table. So now I want us to have a brief subtopic as loan repayment schedule. Yes, yes. It is given in the exam. Yeah, and I prepare. But sometimes you figure I go whatever discount sometimes, but no fair formulas. No. Even if they are indicated there, even they are indicated on the tables. Yes, hata kwa hiyo table tumepewa. Unaona kwa hiyo table uko nayo. Hebu angalia hapo juu. Yeah, it is given, but most of the time they will give you a figure which is in the table. Kuna zile haziko, mnaona kwa hiyo order. Kama gani in the first one, since it's not there. Sometimes it may not be there. So if it is not there, don't assume that you just calculate. Your formula is covered. So let us now write something brief about. By the time we do 2 topics, because now onwards, so you'll get to understand how to use the table. So let us now have a subtopic as loan repayment schedule. We can now have a subtopic as loan repayment schedule. We now look at the loan repayment schedule. The loan repayment schedule. Loan repayment schedule. So for the loan repayment schedule, we summarize that it shows the amount borrowed. It shows, that's now the loan repayment schedule. It shows the amount borrowed. It shows the amount borrowed, comma, installment payment, comma, interest for each period, interest for each period, comma, principal amount, and the outstanding balance, principal amount and the outstanding balance at the end of each period, and the outstanding balance at the end of each period. So we have said that it shows the amount borrowed, installment payment, interest for each period, principal amount, and the outstanding balance at the end of each period. Then another paragraph, we note that the installment amount paid at the end of each period, the installment amount paid at the end of each period, the installment amount paid at the end of each period, the installment amount paid at the end of each period, comma, shows the or represents the annuity. It represents the annuity, and it is computed as follows. It represents the annuity and it is computed as follows. Represent the annuity and it is computed as follows. So it will represent the annuity and it is computed as follows. So now to get the installment payment, you simply get amount borrowed. Then we divide by present value interest factor and R% for period. So when you want to get the installment payment. Simply take the amount borrowed. Then go to the second table, that is present value interest factor for the annuity. You take the interest rate, then N is the loan is for how many years? So you get the figure from the second table, that annuity table. Then now you come up with the installment. So if you want to borrow money and you want to know how much to pay as installment for each year, what you take the amount borrowed, then you have the interest rate, then the period of the loan. So that period of the interest rate, you go to that table, look, it is what percent. Then the period loan, check under the period. So get that figure from the table. Then now you take that amount or divide by that figure. You now know how much to pay as for each installment. That's now how it's coming up with the installment payment. If you want to know the installment for any loan, just take what is to be borrowed. Then they will give you the interest rate. Then they will give you the period of the loan. So you go to that annuity table, just connect, then get the figure, then come up with the installment. And now we add there a paragraph by noting that the installment payment, the installment payment has two components. The installment payment has two components. The installment payment has two components, i.e. Roman letter 1, the principal amount. Roman letter 1, the principal amount. Roman letter 2, interest. So Roman letter 1, we have said principal amount. Roman letter 2, it is the interest. So that's now the format. So there is a question. There is now a question in your past papers. So the question I want us to check is December 2021. December 2021. There is a question number 3, part B. So you go to page 15. When you go to page 15, there is a question for December 2021. Question number 3, part B. December 2021. Question number 3, part B. December 2021, question 3, part B. So that question 3, part B, the one for Seaphone Limited. So Seaphone Limited borrowed shillings 15 million. They borrowed shillings 15 million from Baraka Bank at an annual interest rate. So we go to page 15. Page 15, you just want to capture. So they have said that Seaphone Limited borrowed shillings 15 million from Baraka Bank and an annual interest rate of 16%, repayable for 4 equal annual installments at the end of each year. So required, they wanted you to prepare a loan amortization schedule for the company. So loan amortization schedule is the same as the loan repayment schedule. So the first thing you do with the question is to calculate the installment payment. The first thing you do with the question is to calculate the installment payment. So installment payment, installment payment, installment payment is supposed to be given by amount borrowed. Amount borrowed. So we divide by present value interest factor for the annuity. So hii tumepewa interest rate of what percent? It is 16% for how many years? Periods. For like that. So how much did we borrow? It's 15 million. So I want you to go to the table. The one for the annuity. The one for the annuity table. Confirm 16% in period 4. Sorry? 2.7. So it has to play which way? So you just round off to define 18. 5. 89. Like that. Yeah, so that is now our installment. That now will give you the installment. Then once you have the installment, now we go to the loan amortization schedule. We now prepare the loan repayment or amortization schedule. Loan repayment or amortization schedule. Loan repayment or the amortization schedule. So when you are preparing that schedule, when you prepare the schedule, you'll be having the year. You'll be having the year. Having the year. Then amount at the start. At the start, then installment. Installment payment. Installment payment, then interest. Interest per annum, which is 16%. Then finally the principal amount. The principal amount. So just get that sheet. We just get that particular sheet. So amount at the start of year 1 is 15 million. So installment then interest is 16%. So what is 16% of 15 million? Sorry?
24.
It is 2.4 million. Then now subtract this interest from the installment to get the principal. To get the principal, subtract interest from the installment. So when you want to get the principal amount, simply subtract interest from the installment. So itakuja which figure? 960. 5. So you have seen the installment has 2 items. The installment connect interest and the principal, but interest is not part of the amount borrowed. You see that? So if I want to get the balance at the end of year 1, which is also the balance at the start of year 2, you simply subtract this principal amount from this amount at the start, so that you get the balance at the end of year 1, which is the same as now the balance at the start of year 2. When you want to get the balance at the start of year 2, simply subtract this principal amount from that interest, so that you get now the figure at that portion. Can I put that 12 millions? 0.9. 0. Yeah. So installment will not change. Installments will come back to the same. 5, 3, 6, 0, 5, 8, 9. So installment will remain. So interest, get again 16% of this amount at the start. Get the 16% of this amount at the start. Sorry? 305. Then when you round off 36. Also subtract this from that to get the balance, the principal amount. So subtract interest from the installment to get the principal amount. 400 289. So subtract that same figure from this. Get the value at the start of year 3. 86.5. Sorry? 86.5. Then your installment tunasema haibadiliki. So now you get the interest. 1376. So what is there as the principal amount? Then after that, also get the amount at the start of year 4. 46, 1. So hii ingine tunasema it will not change. So any question here? Sorry. 7. So subtract kutoka kwa hiyo utapata ngapi? Or 6 2 1172. Unakuza ngapi? Yeah, but now so finally we want to agree on something. We agree at the end of the loan period there should be no balance. Yeah, the reason why this figure is supposed to be the same as this one. So you see our comparison is just small. Up to college they are the same. So that the difference in 172 and 359. Yeah, so the reason why there's like a small difference is if figure tulipata kwa table, it had been rounded off. So then also tumekuwa to round off some figures. But if we could have used the exact values, the amount itakuwa the same. So the last period, just make this value to be the same as the one at the start, so that there is no balance remaining. The reason has been the rounding off. So we should not have the balance at the end of the loan period. So the last one, just make this principal amount to be the same as the amount at the start, so that when you subtract, you get a 0. But you can see there's a difference. So the difference is due to the rounding off. Right away from this figure we got from the table, it had been rounded off to 4 decimal places. So that was how to get the 6 marks. So for now, it is almost already time. So we shall stop there. When we meet, we shall now get some other questions on the loan repayment. Then we can move on. So let us stop there for now.